ॐ वाङ् मे मनसि प्रतिष्ठिता मनो मे वाचि प्रतिष्ठितम् आविराविर्मयेधि वेदसम आणीस्तः श्रुतं मे मा प्रहासि अनेनाधीतेनाहोरात्रान् सन्दधामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्भक्तारमवतु अवतु माम् अवतु भक्तारमवतु भक्तारम् ॐ शान्ति 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 हरिः ॐ May my speech be accorded with the mind. May my mind be accorded with the speech. O self-effulgent one Brahman, reveal thyself to me. May you both, speech and mind, be the carriers of the highest truth to me. May not all that I have heard depart from me. May I be able to join day and night through this study. I shall utter what is verbally true. I shall utter what is mentally true. May that Brahman protect me. May that Brahman protect the teacher. May that protect me. May that protect the teacher. Om, peace, peace. Peace be unto you all. Good morning. We are very happy this morning that we have our guest speaker, Swami Tyagarupananda Ji Maharaj, in our midst, who has come from India. He has been traveling for this month, and probably this is his last lap. And from here, he will be going to Houston. And then from there, he will leave for India on 22nd of this month. Tyagarupananda Ji has 39 years of monastic experience in our order, which includes serving various Ramakrishna order, mainly the educational institutions, both school and colleges, as principal, teacher. He is a doctorate in economics and has taught economics and English during his monastic life and pre-monastic life also. He has been a guest speaker on economics, philosophy and religions in many prestigious Indian and international universities and institutions. He regularly teaches and conducts classes on Upanishads and Indian scriptures. His overseas engagements in the past have included lectures in London, Edinburgh, Dublin, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and Bangladesh. He joined Ramakrishna Mission as a brahmachari in 1985 and has been primarily serving educational institutions throughout his entire monastic life. presently. He is in one of the educational and Mott Center in West Bengal, Malda, Ramakrishna Mission Mott and Mission, Malda, and conducts classes in English and Sanskrit for the students at school. That's a high secondary school. And he is the Adhyaksha Secretary of that school, Mott and Mission. That is a combined center, Mott and Mission. So he is the Secretary and Adhyaksha of Mott and Mission of Malda. Besides, we have been a long association, connection and friendship from pre-monastic life. So we know each other from pre-monastic life, and after joining, we had been living in the same room for at least 2 years. Yeah. So I am very happy that he has kindly accepted our invitation and has kept some time to spend with us and to deliver talk this morning. He has a extremely busy schedule today. He has to give 3 lectures today. The first one is here, the second one is in Badrikashrama, and the third one in the evening in San Jose House. So this morning he is going to speak on a very, very interesting subject. Generally, we do not have this kind of topic in our lectures here in the United States and obviously in Berkeley. He is going to speak on the poems of Swami Vivekananda. Probably not all. We know about we know Swami Vivekananda is the philosopher, philanthropist and the spiritual personality. But he composed number of poems which have some philosophical depth, and these are also obviously the subject of spiritual teachings. So I am very happy that Swami Tyagarupananda ji has taken up that particular area of Swami Vivekananda's teachings. So without much ado, I request Swami Tyagarupananda ji to start his lecture.
Achandala pratihatayo yasya prema pravaha lokatito pyahana jau लोककल्याणमार्गम् त्रैलोक्येऽप्य प्रतिममहिमा जानकी प्राणबन्धो भक्त्या ज्ञानं वृतवरवपु सीतया यो हि राम भक्त्या ज्ञानं वृतवरवपु सीतया यो हि राम. I start with this invocation, a poem by Swami Vivekananda in Sanskrit. So the meaning of this poem is Achandala, up to the persons of the lowest caste, without any hindrance, without any obstacles, whose love would be flowing. Prema Prabaha. Prabaha means flow. Prema is love. One who has taken the form of a human being, as it were, out of devotion, who in spite of being above the worldly give and take, is ever ready to help others out of this miasma that this world is. To that Ramakrishna, I bow down to him, who was the Lord of Sita, and yet is an embodiment of knowledge. This poem still has another part to it. I have confined myself only to the first stanza. Only goes on to prove that Swami Vivekananda has composed poems in Sanskrit as well. At the outset, I would convey my heartfelt thanks to be able to speak at this Vedanta Society, Berkeley. This university town is so much known to the outsiders that when the news went via the internet that I am going to speak here at Berkeley, people started congratulating me, of course, on the wrong premise. I had to humbly tell them that I'm not speaking at the university, however. It's at the Vedanta Society. We would be having a goodly audience, as we have already assembled here. So today's subject, as we have heard, is the literary achievements of Swami Vivekananda. Any person's poems or prose or writings would be a reflection of the human being that he is, his philosophy of life, his manner, and his outlook towards the society in general. Swami Vivekananda, interestingly, had been a poet or a litterateur ever since his younger days. In fact, just after the passing away of Ramakrishna in 1886, when Vivekananda was only 23 years of age, he had compiled a book of songs. That book, Sangeet Kalpataru, had a long introduction by Narendranath, the future Swami Vivekananda. This scholarly introduction had the history of Indian classical music, of the different rhythms, tala, of the different tunes, raga. He had remained anonymous in that book. And it was a precursor to the different literature that Vivekananda would be composing throughout his life. He would be composing poems in English, Bengali and Sanskrit. With the short life that he would be having of barely 39 years, and added to it, of course, was his life of a mendicant, a monk, a preacher of Vedanta, there wasn't a lot of time remaining to compose poems and proses. But the brilliant intellect that he was, one of the foremost literary critics of Bengal, Pramothonath Bishi, has credited Vivekananda to be the first writer in colloquial Bengali. Just to help those who don't have Bengali as the mother tongue, most languages would have what is known as a classical form, Sadhu Bhasha, and another, the colloquial form, Cholit Bhasha. It was more prevalent in those days to compose poems and proses in the Sadhu Bhasha, the formal language, which was close to the Sanskrit language. So, Pramothonath Bishi, the important critic, has said that through his writings, Vivekananda introduced Cholit Bhasha, the colloquial language, as a language of the literature as well. Addition, if you look at his writings, you will see his views on literature. He would be saying in later days, you see, it was through the colloquial language that the great teachers of religion had reached out to the masses, reached out to the heart. Whenever you have a formal language, the language of the intellectuals, your teachings, your lessons become confined to libraries, to the universities, not to the practical space. So, with such a view towards literature, you can naturally expect Vivekananda to compose poems, and that to a diverse number of them. He would say in later days, before I go out to the discussion on poems, that see, Jesus Christ had reached to the masses not through the Latin language, but through the common language of those days, Aramaic. And again, Ramakrishna, he would give this example, had spoken in the colloquial language. All centers of the Vedanta Society in America, they have the Gospel of Ramakrishna, of Sri Ramakrishna, as one of their readings. This book, which is a translation of the original Ramakrishna Kathamrita, Katha means words, Amrita is nectar. This translation, in fact, takes Ramakrishna down to everyone. He doesn't remain a man of the temple, of only in the smaller perimeter of religion alone. He becomes a person who is very near and dear. He's a person who sympathizes with all of us. So with such a view of literature, the most important view being that literature is an important vehicle for giving the higher teachings as well. It should not be a medium of mere intellectual discussions. You can expect Vivekananda to compose a number of poems. So I'll start with his celebrated poem, Song of the Sannyasin. Sannyasin means a monk. So this poem, just to give you a brief overview, was composed in 1895 when Swami Vivekananda was in America. He had gone to 1000 Iron Park with a small group of devotees. He had been busy discussing religion and philosophy after the Parliament of Religions held in Chicago in 1893. He had been a popular speaker, but he was now tired. So in the summer months of 1895, a group of well-wishers took him to an island on the St. Lawrence River. On this 1,000-island park, Swamiji gave some of the best teachings he would be delivering. In this mood, he composed this poem. And this poem tells us of the liberal mind of a sannyasin, unfettered by worldly encumbrances. He's a person who cannot be tied to the joys or the sorrows of the world. He's a person who wants to break the bondages of nature. So let us look at the words of the poem, and we would try to read between the lines occasionally. The Song of the Sannyasin, composed in 1895. Wake up the note, the song that had its birth far off, where worldly taint could never reach, in mountain caves and glades of forest deep, whose calm no sigh for lust or wealth or fame could ever dare to break, where rolled the stream of knowledge, truth and bliss that follows both. Sing high that note, Sannyasin bold, say Om Tat Sat Om. Strike off thy fetters, bonds that bind thee down, of shining gold, or darker, baser ore. Love, hate, good, bad, and all the dual throng. No, slave is slave, caressed or whipped, not free. For fetters, though of gold, are not less strong to bind. Then off with them, Sannyasin bold, say Om Tat Sat Om. These are the first two stanzas. So as you get to the words, it says, it reminds us of the pure letter Om. This letter has been stressed on in the Indian philosophy as being the symbol of God. It says all the sounds are compressed, as it were, in this letter. And it is through sounds or letters that words are composed. By means of words, the different objects on this earth are known. So, philosophically, words and objects are inseparable. Nama and Rupa. Nama are the words, Rupa are the forms. They are inseparable. Their essence of the sounds or the names is Om. So Om, the summary, the essence of all the letters, is the proper symbol of God. So this ends with Om Tat Sat. Tat is that, Tat means that, Sat is ever present, ever present. That God who is ever present, who cannot be in any way fettered encumbered by the good or bad of nature, he reminds us about him, God, at the end of each stanza. Just look at these lines once again. Whose calm no sigh for lust or wealth or fame could ever dare to break, where rolled the stream of knowledge, truth and bliss. You have heard these words, Sat Chit Ananda. These are known to be the epithets of Ishvara or God. Sat signifies ever present, existence. Chit is knowledge. Ananda is bliss. So God, who cannot be properly understood by the senses, by the eyes, by the ears, by the nostrils, that is, by the organs of perception, he is beyond form. He is only characterized by this knowledge, bliss and existence. Sat Chit Ananda. These are only pointers to who he is really. Because whenever you limit him by a form, whether it's Jesus or Krishna or Kali or Ramakrishna, you are essentially putting a boundary on him. You are essentially limiting him by some adjectives. So think about him as beyond adjectives, as beyond boundaries. He is Sat Chit Ananda, it says. So how do you do that? In the second stanza, he says, strike off thy fetters. All of us, we have fetters. We are encumbered by the various impressions since our childhood. We were born into a particular family. We have had a particular kind of education. Whenever we want to go forward, our past beckons and says, no, you can't. No, you can't. So it says, break off these fetters, these bondages. You are limitless. Remember that real form of yours, that swarupa of yours, that divine self of yours, which is limited by the body, by the adjectives, by the education, by the impression. You must tear it apart. You must be able to go beyond. So look at these lines. Strike off thy fetters, bonds that bind thee down. Of shining gold or darker, baser ore. There are some bondages which are good. People would be saying he's a very good person. You would like to hear such praises, isn't it? So these are the golden bondages. But whenever you are ever eager to have these golden bondages, you must be ready to take upon yourself the darker ones as well. Any person cannot be only a bundle of good qualities. He must have some blemishes as well. So these are the darker, baser ores of your personality, as it were, he says. And then he says, go beyond the pairs of opposites, love, hate, good, bad, and all the dual throng. Philosophy says again and again, a person who loves a particular somebody must be hating others. So love and hate are the obverse and the reverse of the coin, as it were. Love, hate, good, bad, and all the dual throng. No, slave is slave, caressed or whipped, not free. That is, we would look at the pleasant, good things of life. So who creates these bad ones? There are persons whom we despise, whom we hate, isn't it? But aren't they the creations of God itself? So the God in its totality would include good, bad, hate and love, all of them, isn't it? So philosophy says go beyond them both. Be established in equanimity, in sameness. So it says, then off with them. Sannyas in bold say Om Tat Sat Om. The question is, you would be asking us, Swamiji, it's nice to hear such things, but how do we practice it in our day-to-day lives? Isn't it? So philosophy says, Indian philosophy says, in order to imbibe such characteristics in your life, you must have a blazing example in front. Persons who have been able to practice these going beyond the dual throngs could be models for you. These are the teachers, the guru, the acharyas. Any discipline, any knowledge would require teachers, isn't it? Otherwise, why do we have these huge universities? University of California at Berkeley or the Stanford University. The Google would have done that. Huge libraries would have done that. But they don't. You require human touch to the pursuit of knowledge. He or she, the teacher, tells you that, well, this is your path. Follow this path. Then you would be explore that path for yourself, but not before. You require a human touch to your pursuit of knowledge. So this sannyasin could be a role model who could guide us along the path. So this is the first poem of Swami Vivekananda which I said, which I discussed. Now let's move to the second poem. Any poet writes from incidents that happened in his own life, right? After Ramakrishna passed away in 1886, his disciples, Narendranath, Rakhal and the others, went along the length and breadth of India, willing to pursue knowledge, the higher goals of religion. Come or what may, that is the idea. Depending on God totally, not having any permanent abode for themselves. Like the rolling river, the sannyasin is willing to depend on God. That is the idea. During these times, Vivekananda went to a place known as Gazipur. There he met an ascetic. His name was Pauhari Baba. Pavana means air. So one who lived only on air, that is one who took as food the least amount, was known as Pauhari Baba. So Narendranath had a desire during those days to be initiated into yoga, the yoga of meditation, Raja Yoga, by this Pauhari Baba. But as he lingered on in the ashrama of Pauhari Baba, he had a vision of Ramakrishna. Ramakrishna had passed away a few years earlier, but as Narendranath lay on his bed, he watched Ramakrishna standing in his front, somewhat sad in the face, without saying anything. Narendranath initially dismissed this as a bad dream, right? But this continued for a number of days. It continued for 21 days, right? Imagine the tenacity of Narendranath or Vivekananda. He wouldn't budge. He felt that Ramakrishna was saying that you have had enough of religion from me. I had been your guru. Why do you look for religion elsewhere as well? But the tenacity of Narendranath, he stuck on for 21 days. But finally he yielded. He agreed that Ramakrishna was enough, full of knowledge, full to the brim. Pauhari Baba was a great ascetic, but he couldn't give him more than what Ramakrishna had given to him. So it was in this mood that he composed this poem. It's originally in Bengali, so I would take your permission to read a few words in Bengali as well and translate it into English later on. Gai geet shonate tomaye, bhalo mondo nahi goni, nahi goni loko ninda josho kotha, dash toma dohakar, সশক্তিক নমি তব পদে, আছো তুমি পিছে দাঁড়িয়ে, তাই ফিরে দেখি তব হাসি মুখ. Let's look at the meaning, the English one, right? গাই গীত শোনাতে তোমায়. গাই is to sing. Geet is a song. This is the poem that I composed for you, O Ramakrishna. He doesn't mention his name. Bhalo mondo nahi goni. I have had enough discussion on what is good and what is bad. Now I have reached a conclusion. I have finally decided that I am your servant, of yours and Ma Sarada, your consort. I haven't been able to fathom who you are. I have had my doubts, but now I have come to the conclusion. You stand in front of me. Acho tumi piche daraiye. You are standing there with a morose face. Now I look and see that you are smiling again. No, I have had enough of doubts. I am now ready to surrender at your feet. This eternal thirst for knowledge has taken me to different corners of the country. But now it must end. I have understood that the treasure is there with my teacher. It's my task to do the sadhana, the meditation, the penance. It will then take me to that goal. I will now move to a third poem. This is a somewhat difficult poem. This is a poem on the Mother Kali. This Kali imagery tells about both the constructive and the destructive aspect of God. If you have seen the image of Kali, it has 4 hands. She has 4 hands. On her right, the 2 hands signify bounty, vara, and abhaya, fearlessness. Don't be afraid, I am there. Vara, do you want anything from me? I am willing to give you these. This is what we normally pray God for, isn't it? This is on the right. But on the left is her horrific form. On the left, she has a sword in one hand and the severed head of the demon in another. On the left, she's a symbol of destruction. When you have the huge forest fires in California, when you have had the pandemic, corona outbreak, so many people had died. So it was then that the horrific, destructive face of God comes, as it were. Can't we brush all these under the carpet and say that ours was a pleasant God? Hindu philosophy says you can't. You must accept both these aspects of God. So be prepared to accept God in totality. He can be pleasant, giving, and can be destructive as well. When sometimes we are in distress, we look up to God, pray to Him or her, and sometimes they arrive, sometimes they don't. But what happens when death comes to the family? What happens when you are thrown out of your job? What happens when you meet an accident and are confined to your homes? Do you go on blaming God for that? So be prepared to accept both of them, this poem says. This poem was composed in English, and Vivekananda was in a divine mood. He had visited Kashmir at the time along with his Western devotees. It was during this time that he composed this poem. Listen to this poem now. It's an imagery of a storm, the nature in its fury. The stars are blotted out. The clouds are covering clouds. It is darkness, vibrant, sonant, in the roaring, whirling wind are the souls of 1,000,000 lunatics, just loosed from the prison house, wrenching trees by the roots, sweeping all from the path. The sea has joined the fray and swirls up mountain waves to reach the pitchy sky. The flash of lurid light reveals on every side 1,000 shades of death, begrimed and blacked, scattering plagues and sorrows, dancing mad with joy. Come, mother, come, for terror is thy name. Death is in thy breath, and every shaking step destroys a world forever. Thou time, the all-destroyer. Who dares misery love and hug the form of death? Dance in destruction's dance, to him the mother comes. Swamiji, in giving his own interpretation of this poem, during his conversations, Vivekananda would often speak about this poem. He would say, you see, most of us, we are faint-hearted. We look up to God for the goodly pleasures of life. Can't we have the audacity, the fearlessness to embrace danger, death, pestilence? Can we embrace when there is a death in the family? Can we embrace the fact that we have an accident and are misled by our own relatives? So when you have such a composure of your mind, then only can you really depend on God. Otherwise, when you look up to God for pleasures, you are undone when your own child suddenly passes away. You are undone when you are thrown out of your job and you are without money. You feel, oh God, what wrong have I done to suffer these consequences? So do you have the strength of your mind to bear these wrongdoings apparently? So for this you require steeling of the heart, the mind, the body. So a brief look at this poem once again. The first part gives a ghastly description of the external nature, right? The stars are blotted out. The clouds are covering clouds. It's a precursor of heavy rains, okay? And then comes a storm, a wind. Are the souls of 1,000,000 lunatics, billion lunatics all around, as it were, right? Just loose from the prison house, wrenching trees by the roots. When there are thunderstorms, all of us, we prefer staying indoors, right? Would you have the strength of mind to come out and face the storms? That is the question. That's the external part of it. But how about looking inside into our own lives? It says, of death begrimed and black, scattering plagues and sorrows, dancing mad with joy. Come, mother, come, for terror is thy name, death is in thy breath. I remember during this corona pandemic, we had occasions to serve people during those times, right? As in America, in India too, in the second phase, corona had played havoc. During those days, people were without jobs, without employment. Many businesses had closed down. So people were looking up to this society, to the Ramakrishna mission, that they should come up and serve. Government was ready to give us food, clothing, and whatever things we want to distribute among the poor. But the government employees even were not ready to face the consequence, to go in the midst of dangers. So I remember the district of Malda, where I am currently stationed. Swamiji had mentioned the place as well. We would go out in our vehicles, traversing the whole length of the district from one block to another. The roads would be fully deserted, right? And we even saw that when we would go to a village, the disease spread all the more when the migrant laborers arrived from other parts of the country. Remember during the pandemic, the corona, there were great restrictions on traveling, right? Because the idea was that the disease was being carried from one part of the country to another, or from one country to another. So it was there also that when the migrant laborers arrived, gradually the disease started spreading. So where the migrant laborers would be staying, they would be ostracized. None would mix with them. Even their own relatives would shun them. I remember when we would carry the lunch packets to them, they would be afraid of coming out from their rooms. We would remove their fears and tell them, don't be afraid, we won't harm you. Because how can you remain without food for days? But that was also a challenge for us, We personally were affected by the corona pandemic twice, because for 5 months, during the 2 years, we had served. And that in a real sense, gave us courage, gave us strength of mind. So this poem actually tells us, you must have the strength of mind to face the ghastly spheres of life. You must not be confined to the pleasures merely. Because if you are mainly ever alert to look at the good things of life, you won't be able to sympathize with others. Because if you want the pleasurable things of life, when you won't acknowledge that at one point of time, you too would be affected by disease. You too would run out of money. You too would at one point of time be betrayed by others. So you can only sympathize when you be by their side during times of danger. The fourth poem that I would take up before summarizing is a celebrated poem that is sung in many of the Ramakrishna societies all over the world. Some of you would be knowing. That is, could you say any of them? What is the song or the poem? Khandano Bhavo Bandhan, right? It's mainly composed in the more formal language, but actually it's in Bengali. So it's easy to understand, especially if you know a little bit of Sanskrit. So I'll take the liberty of quoting a part of it and giving a liberal translation, right? Because those of you who come to the society would at some time or other would be hearing this song. Because throughout the world, in more than 260 centers of the Ramakrishna's mission or the Vedanta Society, Everywhere this song is sung. So in a sense, this song has now attained a global character, which carries the message of Vedanta, of Vivekananda, to people in different countries, India, America, England, Netherlands, everywhere. So this song in a sense has a part of history into it. So let's go to the song. Khondono bhavo bandhano jago bandhano bondi tomai. Interestingly, this song actually qualifies Ramakrishna without uttering his name anywhere into this rather longish song. This is the beauty of this song, It only deals with adjectives. So in that sense, it avoids the personal name and form, right? It only gives you a bunch of adjectives, desirable qualities that people ought to have. So let us look at one by one. This is actually a poem that has been put into music and is being sung every day. Khondono bhavo bandhano. Bandhano means bondage. Bhavo means world. Khondono is removal, right? O remover of the bondage of the world. Jago bandhano, one who is respected by all in this world. I personally bow down to you. Why? Because I too might have these qualities, these pure characters that you symbolize. You are without blemish, you are pure of character. Without having any wealth of your own, you are the very epitome of renunciation. This poem would go on saying. And yet you sympathize with others. You are ever eager to take upon yourself the works, the fruits of works which others are supposed to suffer, right? In Christian theology too we have vicarious sufferings. That sufferings which ought to be borne by one for his own deeds, that is being borne by his teacher. This suffering for works done by others is what Jesus Christ is supposed to have done. So a religious teacher who sympathizes with others, sympathizes with his fellow beings and feels that they ought to come out of the bondages of the world, takes upon himself the results of work. Okay? So this only a person of elevated status can do. We also do this to a degree. The father or the mother sometimes bear responsibilities for the works done by their children, right? So a person who loves others can do this. It is the love which can gradually smoothen the path of this world. And Ramakrishna epitomizes this, he goes on to say, Bhaktarjano jugalo charano. Jugalo is a dual. Charano is leaf, are the foot. So your feet are the ever refuge of the admirers of devotees. Why? Because they want to imbibe your pure character. But interesting about this song is that it goes on telling about the different qualities of Ramakrishna and without personally naming him, as I had said. And towards the end of this poem, the song would go on in a more robust rhythm. The rhythm is faster there, right? So when you listen to the song, you are caught up with the tune as it goes towards the end. You'll see, as you go towards the end, you are caught up with the rhythm of the song. It's faster. Towards the end it says, Jyotiro Jyoti Ujalo Hridi Kondoro. Hridi is heart, Kondoro is the cave. Jyoti is the light. O light of all lights, you enlightened the darkness of my mind, the cave of my mind, which is ever encumbered by worldly desires, wants. Please come into it and enlighten it. You are the very epitome of renunciation. But we too ought to have these qualities. Unless we have this, we would be ever smitten by these joys and sorrows. Ever we would run after these pleasures and would be lamenting when we would be missing out on them. So for this, you stand as the epitome of renunciation. Kindly be the model for us whom we can follow. But as I said at the outset, Swami Vivekananda would never stress on the personal aspect of God. He himself had been influenced by the Brahmo Samaj, the reformist movement in Bengal at the time, which had generally discouraged the personal aspect of God. Coming to Ramakrishna, he had come to understand the Kali form, understand why people take on the personal aspect of God. But when Vivekananda came over to the West, he, in the different cities, had spread the message of the Vedanta. When he went back to India, his brother disciples had said, "Why didn't you categorically preach Ramakrishna, your guru?" Then he said gravely, "You see, there are already great characters in the West. In the Christianity, you had Jesus as a great character. So what we tried to do is stress on the principles of the Vedanta." This is done even today. You will see in the names of the centers in America, the name Ramakrishna is normally not used. Vedanta Society is stressed on this name, Vedanta, so that it speaks about principles, not on persons. So that you can stress on the principle and understand that different religions like Christianity, like Hinduism, like Islam are basically attempts to reach up to that non-dual aspect of God, where adjectives, forms are not necessary. Like different paths leading up to the same center, the different religions are like the different ways which lead up to the same God, Ishvara, Allah, or Jehovah, right? So this is the teaching that Swamiji would stress on again and again. And these are also well conveyed in his writings as well. So to summarize what I discussed today, we can have some questions, some interactions at the end. I gave a brief overview of his literary achievements and mentioned that ever since his younger days, at the age of 23, had compiled a book of songs, Sangeet Kalpataru, with a longish introduction that was written by him. And in later days, he had written in the different languages, poems and songs. These included poems in English, Sanskrit, Bengali. I also mentioned that he is considered to be a pioneer in writing the colloquial Bengali language, right? And finally, he firmly believed that language or literature was a medium by which higher thoughts should reach out to society and the masses. It should not be only for pleasure. It should not be reserved for only conveying the human emotions as they stand. It should be a vehicle which takes us to higher goals, higher objectives in life. So we then discussed 4 of the poems. First was the Song of the Sannyasin, the song on renunciation, the first one. The second one was a Bengali poem which showed his gratefulness to Ramakrishna when he had gone to Pavhari Baba. The third was Kali Dibada, which encompassed both the constructive and the destructive aspect of God in its totality, so that we look towards the impersonal aspect of God. And the fourth one is the celebrated Khandano Bhavo Bandhano, sung in the Vesper service across the different centers of the Ramakrishna order throughout India and abroad. So finally, we end with Swamiji's narration of, as I said, there's a number of songs by him. I finally end with the remark that Swamiji himself was a dexterous musician. He was a very adept musician. So in addition to these poems, some of these he had put to music. Not only the one that I mentioned, Khandano Bhavabandhano. There are some of brilliant Sanskrit songs and Bengali songs as well that are still sung today, that are still considered as prayers to Almighty. The Almighty can be reached through different names, different forms. So you can see his Amba Stotram, a hymn to the Divine Mother. You can see Tathoya Tathoya Nache Bhola. It's a song to Shiva. And you can thus, and also other songs on Ramakrishna, like the one that I recited at the very beginning. It's Sanskrit hymn, Achandala Apratihatareo, whose kindliness, whose compassion is not encumbered by the station from which you come from. Ramakrishna would say later on, I see that people who are in white color are coming. So he had foreseen that the message of Vedanta would spread across and come to the West. In Swami Vivekananda, we had seen its fruition. So now I open to the floor for some discussion and some questions. You are welcome to put across your views. The first questioner would naturally have a clearer time for himself or herself, so you can take up that slot for yourself. Yes.
When you spoke about Swami Vivekananda's poem, Song of the Sannyasi, you said that the commentary on it was that we needed a sannyasi or someone to show us the path, and we couldn't really find it on our own, to progress in the path. Does this mean that we need to find what is called a guru? And if that is so, is it like a physical person that we need to find, or is it like a guru principle? Or
I understand.
How do we find this sannyasi
That's
to lead us on the path?
So first of all, the main poem had stressed on the ideal of an ascetic. The main poem had said that you ought to go beyond the bondage of the world, whether good or bad, right? So in order to achieve this goal, which is somewhat high, right? For this to be practicable, so that it doesn't remain confined into this auditorium alone or in the temples, for that you require a human teacher as well. I probably gave the examples of universities or they say the internet. You have plenty of knowledge there, isn't it? So the huge library at the Berkeley University that Maharaj had taken me along. So many books you have, isn't it? But just sitting there, would it make you a great scholar? Would it help you understand which branch of knowledge we are suitable for? For that, you require a teacher to take you along the path, who would tell you, yes, this is your inclination, you are fit for this, right? Similarly, in this religion also, it's not merely ceremonies, it is a philosophy of life. Vivekananda would say again and again, the religion to be practicable must be actually adapted in your day-to-day behavior. so that it doesn't remain only in formal ceremonies only. And for that there must be a person who has really done so. Seeing him, you are inspired. That is why probably you will require a teacher. You can name him a guru or a teacher, whatever name you call by, but an example is necessary, right? Okay, others? That's well. Well, first of all, in the form of Kali, Swamiji would say, the boldness to accept sufferings, as you accept this reality, then you would be able to serve others better. I hope some of you might have read that poem in English, that wonderful poem, There Was Once a Battle, a soldier had died. The poem starts with this line, home they brought the warrior dead. She nor swooned nor uttered cry. All the maidens watching said, she must weep or she must die. The young soldier has passed away. He is being brought to the house, and his wife is still unable to reconcile herself to it, right? She just stayed numb, isn't talking, isn't crying. So the neighbors around, the soldier's friend, they are dumbfounded how to solve this riddle, okay, right? Then finally one of them had a better idea. This couple had a small child. They brought the child and put the child in the lap of the mother. Then the mother started weeping, right? As soon as she came back to practicality in the real world, she could then perform the works that lay ahead, right? So able to solve, to serve others, you must understand the world as it is. You can't just move yourself away and put your face away from the world. Swamiji Vivekananda would give another somewhat funny example. He would say, you see in the desert, there are some animals, ostriches, who have long legs. They can walk fast, right? And sometimes hunters would come in the modern vehicles to hunt those animals. These animals with the long legs, they would go on walking and running, right? But, well, an animal can't compete with a motorized vehicle. After a time, the hunter is able to catch up with the animal. The animal in the meantime is tired. It has now made a hole in the sand and has immersed its neck in the sand. Vivekananda then says, do you know why this animal is doing that? Because it feels that as it puts the neck in the sand, it is not able to see anyone, right? And the animal surmises that the world, anyone for that matter, won't be able to see it also. Then somewhat funnily he remarks, but that doesn't happen. Soon the hunter catches up and shoots the animal down. He then remarks, this is the way that we look at the world. Sometimes we want to keep our necks buried. We are not realistic to look at the world as it is. It is a combination of good and bad. As we become more realistic, we can serve it better. Vivekananda certainly has stressed on service. That was right, what he said. He had said that, well, through service, you can understand the nuances of Vedanta all the more. Why? Because Vedanta says, these disciplines must be, after all, performed by this body and the mind, right? These are the instruments. All the external ones, money, wealth, honors, they are fleeting, they would come and go. But your body and mind would be there. If they are purified, it is like cleansing of the mirror. in which the reflection of the sun will be. When the mirror is cleansed properly, then the sun can almost appear like blazing. So this divinity that is inherent in man or woman is properly manifest when the body and mind, they are pure. How can this be done? This can be done, Vedanta says, and Vivekananda is echoing those words of the Vedanta, that as you serve others unselfishly, not for your own cause alone, then your body willy-nilly, body and mind, becomes a vehicle like that mirror for the expression, reflection of this divinity, right? That is why this service is necessary, right? Karma yoga is necessary. Work done for the sake of others. Okay, madam? Thank you. Anyone else?
Okay. My question is, what makes a guru?
Beg your pardon.
What makes a guru?
Oh, what makes a guru? Acha. Well, that was a good question, right? Acha. So Vivekananda has a book known as Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti is devotion. Yoga is a path to God. So there he discusses the qualifications of a guru, right? Guru is a teacher. He says, you see, well, a teacher of physics, he also is a guru, right? But guru or teacher of religion is somewhat different. Why? In that his whole life should also be a reflection of what he is teaching, right? Or Ramakrishna would say that, you see, there are great scholars. In those times, in the 19th century, Bengal had great scholars. And some of them were wonderful speakers as well. But Ramakrishna would laugh and say, you see, they are great speakers, but their minds are all well stuck in the mud of the world. He would say, they are like the vultures, they fly high, but their eyes are on the death pit, on the carrions, on the flesh. So if you want to be a teacher of religion, your body and mind should be pure, okay? Willing to serve others, not to hoard only for yourself, right? So these are the qualifications. Vivekananda goes on further and says, you see, he should not only know what the scriptures or the good books say, holy books say, he must also know the spirit of the teachings. And his own life should be a reflection of these teachings as well. So the more you be thus, you yourself will be like a lamppost, he says. You need not go on preaching your message through the Facebook, through the YouTube. He says it will be like the flower in bloom. When the flower has come to bloom, he says, then the bees would come to gather honey. The flower need not advertise. Quoting Ramakrishna, he says, similarly, when your life is in full bloom, becomes pure through service, then others would come. You would then be a proper guru. You would have a message to convey to others. Before that, these would merely be frothy words. You can only listen to that and say, wow, what a wonderful speech. But that won't change your life. To change your life, the teacher must have a good character. A life which speaks for itself, not through words, but through actions. Right? Okay. Yes, anyone else? Otherwise, Maharaj can wind up gradually. Yes.
For several years now, we have read the poem at the 4th of July that
Yes, yes.
for the female devotees who went with
Right.
Swami to India. And so I would like you to comment on that poem.
That's the background of this poem, because this 4th of July will also be celebrated here also after a few days. Actually, 4th of July, interestingly, has another coincidence also. Of course, it would come in later on, before this, after this poem was composed by Swami Vivekananda. On this day, Swamiji would leave his mortal frame, pass away from this world, right? So 4th of July, in the poem itself, which he had composed when they had gone to Kashmir. Kashmir is in the northernmost part of India, right? And they were then staying in houseboats in the river. Vivekananda in one houseboat, and these Western women devotees in another houseboat. On the 4th of July, because he knew that at least two of them were American, one was Josephine MacLeod, another was Mrs. Oli Bull, and the third was Margaret Elizabeth Noble, who was from London, Ireland. He remembered this very much. So on that day, he composed a poem for them. In that poem, you will see that he says about the independent spirit of man. In the year 1776, America had been independent on 4th of July. But this, he makes it more general and says, this is in a sense a clarion call for human beings to be independent. There have been various wars of independence, okay? So 1776, it was America. 1789, you have the French Revolution. 1857, you have the first Indian Battle of Independence, right? Then in 1917, you have the Russian Revolution, when they forsook the czars and has the communistic regime. It was an independence for them, right? 1947, you have Indian War of Independence. Every country has had its own date of independence. Because Vivekananda gave a large part of his teachings in America, right? And in fact, one of the American admirers of Vivekananda in his later days, in her later days, Marie Louise Burke, we are grateful to her that she unearthed many things about Vivekananda which people in India didn't know. Because Vivekananda had spent almost 4 years in America. His activities here, his associations here, what has been published here was unearthed by her. In fact, she says in one place, Vivekananda had given the best of his philosophical teachings for us, for Americans. This was as it was reserved for us. He says in his own words, well, I found the people of the land there. They are now content with having enough of the basic necessities of life. They are now prepared to listen to higher philosophies. So America was a nation which was dear to him. That was why when he composed the poem, he as it were felt that this land was his very own. In fact, some of his Guru Bhais, like Swami Trigunatithananda ji, one of his brother disciples, also felt the same. In fact, Trigunatit Maharaj also was a martyr to the cause, you could say. Because at San Francisco, when he was talking, a person somewhat deranged threw a bomb, and that is why he succumbed finally to it. Okay, madam? Yes, anyone else? Yes.
What happens to make a person become a guru?
I said 1 or 2 points about this, right?
Is there a gift from God, or what does your qualifications to become a guru?
Suppose you want to recruit a teacher in the school and the college. What do you do that? Then you first check his or her qualifications, right? Whether she has the appropriate degrees, and then you conduct an interview, and you have other applicants as well. Then you choose that person who has the best qualifications, or probably if you have a demonstration, the person who teaches best, right? So you screen out the person who is most qualified. So for being a guru, also, you must have some convictions in your own lives, right? So in India, the teaching goes that to be a proper guru, first of all, you must be able to leave your hearth and home. Well, it's not easy. But in India, the belief is that a person who has himself or herself given up home, the bondages of the world, doesn't crave for these, either for money or with personal attachments, that is with marriage as well. Such a person is qualified to speak about religion, right? That's a belief. That says if you can stand above society, above relations, above possessions, then you have the authority, the right to speak about religion, about renunciation. You are fit to be a guru. Before that, you can pass from a theosophical college. You can have a Doctor of Divinity title for yourself, but that won't do. You must be able to renounce the world, the attachments, cravings for name and for fame, and then only you can be a guru for yourself. That's the idea. Okay? Yes, anyone else? Very nice that you come up with questions and interactions. In some places, they were not intelligent questions. Until there are interactions, you won't know that your speech or talk has really gone down to the mind of the listeners, right? Yes, there was another one. I'm thankful to Swami Prasannaatmananda Maharaj. He has given me the chance to speak here, and there will be 2 more talks today, in other places of course. So with this, should we end now? Yes.
Thank you very much, Swami Tyagarupananda ji, for beautiful and interesting lecture on this special topic. There are other poems also written by Swami Vivekananda which are also very important and extremely philosophical. One question is very important here regarding the Kalida Mother, or the poem that Tyagarupananda ji explained, and many questions were asked. That is, the difference between the concept of Kali, we find that Ramakrishna, Sri Ramakrishna projected in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, and Swami Vivekananda wrote or composed or projected through this poem. In the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, we find that Kali is very sweet. Kali is very compassionate. The blessed appearance of Mother Kali, the compassionate appearance of Mother Kali, is depicted by Sri Ramakrishna in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Anandamayi. Anandamayi means the mother of Ananda, blessedness, the mother of bliss. But Swami Vivekananda, in this particular poem, the worship the terrible. So sometimes a confusion arises that whether these two Kalis are same or one, why these two characteristics are projected from the same source. Because we consider Swami Vivekananda and Kalida Mother, Sri Ramakrishna, are from the same source, and that is Mother Kali. Because in a number of statements we find that Swami Vivekananda said that he was offered Swami Vivekananda was dedicated at the feet of Mother Kali by Sri Ramakrishna. But this question sometimes arises. Would you like to highlight this point, please?
I could give you a somewhat near comparison and go back to the discussion, the point that he had raised. You will see in our younger days when we were brahmacharins, this book Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna was not very popular among the monastic members. It was more a private reading. The idea being that Ramakrishna, when discussing religious topics in this Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, had discussed it in front of householders, not in front of the would-be monks. So, just a mere curiosity, some of you have seen the book Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Could you kindly raise your hands? Yes. So, there are quite a few of them. Right. So, the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, you will see, he looks mainly at the persons who are encumbered by the responsibilities of the world, right? So if you ask them, give up all worldly pleasures, give up your sons and daughters and be a monk, that would be a somewhat different kind of a call, which would, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, na buddhi bhedam janayet. It says, do not create bheda, that is division in the mind. Do not create confusions in the mind. Take people along the path that they have already walked so long, and then take them to higher and higher goals. So the idea was that discuss pure topics of renunciation in front of or with the would-be monks and with householders, teach them how to be properly suited for the world, to lead a life of purity and dependence on God. The strict vows of renunciation, celibacy and others should be confined to the monastic members who are willing to give up the world. So I now come back to the discussion on Kali. First of all, it is to the credit of Ramakrishna that this worship of Kali today in the 19th, 20th century it has become more popular. Somewhat in the earlier centuries, these tantrika forms had become somewhat obnoxious. People had started deriding it because tantrika forms doesn't speak of renunciation. The idea being live in the world, and because this world also is a creation of God. Why should you give up the world? This is the tantric doctrine. And then it says, through it, try to go beyond. But that's a difficult idea, right? So in tantrika forms, you won't find the idea of renunciation being stressed on. Sri Ramakrishna, by worshipping in Dakshineshwar at the Kali temple, had gradually being able to, by his life and practices, in the modern generation, being able to popularize or make people more respectful towards the worship of Kali. When he stresses on the Anandamaya form, as Maharaj had been saying, Ananda is bliss, Anandamaya means full of bliss. So there Kali, to others who are deeply stressed by the world, Kali is more a giver of the goodly things of the world, right? For in our scriptures, it has been said, you see, you can be in distress, you can be in need of money, you can be a person who is affected by diseases, afflicted by diseases. Even such a votary of religion is not bad. He also, for some excuses, is calling on God, right? In Bhagavad Gita, these words are there. But remember, to be a proper votary who can embrace death or disease or the horrible forms of the world, you require a very, very strong heart, right? You don't find many explorers climbing along the rugged mountains, right, of Sierra Nevada, right? or the Rocky Mountains of Himalayas. Many know that climbing there is dangerous, but in spite of this, there are people who love this danger in life, who are strong enough to undertake such adventurous trips. Such is the life of a mendicant. Such is a person of the world. Such are such persons who are willing to sacrifice the world to take up a higher cause. But those are like adventurers, right? They can go up to the highest snowy peaks and look at the wonderful panorama there. But there is also the danger of suddenly slipping and falling into the deep gorge below. So such paths are normally not encouraged among people in the world. So there the pleasurable form of God, which most of the religions stress on, are encouraged. In fact, even in the Hindu religion, many of the paths encourage this Anandamaya, blissful form of God only. This Kali form is somewhat, I would say, is a strong realistic form, sometimes difficult to understand even. In fact, not to speak of Westerners, even in India people are somewhat troubled by this Kali form. But it is still there. In a sense, it speaks about the great potential of woman. I remember an article by an American author which says, well, we have talked about the independence of women in America, but in India, women had been praised as gods and goddesses, and that is symbolized in this form of Kali, the all-knower, the all-destroyer, and at the same time, she is willing to give you all protection and shelter if you can take the proper refuge in her. Right? I try to discuss the point.
Thank you very much for beautiful clarification, and thank you all for attending this lecture. Let me conclude. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukkham apnuvat, sarvastarotu durgani, sarvo bhadrani pashyatu, sarva sadbuddhim apnotu, sarva sarvatra nandatu, durjana sajjano bhuyat, sajjana shantim apnuat, shantam uchchete bandhebhyo muktaschanyan vimochayet. May all be happy, may all enjoy good health, may all see happy events, may all be freed from miseries, may all be freed from dangers, may all realize what is good, may all be actuated by noble thoughts, may all rejoice everywhere, may the wicked become virtuous, may the virtuous attain tranquility, may the tranquil be free from bondages, may the freed make others free, may the Supreme Spirit, the presiding deity of all sacred activities, be satisfied, for He being pleased, the whole universe feels satisfied. Om, peace, peace. Peace be unto you all. Next Sunday, we will have the Sunday talk as usual at 11 o'clock in this hall. Swami Prasannaatmananda will deliver the talk. This afternoon, there will be a talk by Swami Tyagarupananda ji in Bodhrika Ashrama. Some of our devotees are visiting Bodhrika Ashrama. Swami will speak there, Shankaracharya and Ramanuja. And then in the evening, in our San Jose house, today is the Mother's Day, so Swami is going to speak there on the human face of Holy Mother. So, if you are interested, you are welcome to participate. As usual, tea and coffee will be served at our Saradananda Hall, which will be followed by Prasad Luncheon. You all are welcome to join. Thank you.